Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Queen Elizabeth, A Day in Her Life. Today we're going to look at Windsor Castle. In previous videos, I did a few about Balmoral Castle, so today it's time to give Windsor its due. The castle occupies 13 acres of ground above the south bank of the River Thames. Windsor Castle is just 20 miles west of Buckingham Palace, and it is the largest and longest occupied castle in Europe. Around 1070, William the Conqueror began building. 16 years later, the castle was completed. It has over 1,000 rooms and more than 300 fireplaces, and it houses a substantial portion of the royal collection, including furniture, paintings, and armor. So Windsor dates back to the Saxon times. AuthenticVacations.com stated, Windsor Forest was a favorite hunting ground of the Saxon kings, and it was strategically important because of its River Thames location. After William the Conqueror defeated the last Saxon king, he built a ring of fortification around London. His great keep was the Tower of London, and he also built a series of 9 castles. All were less than 20 miles away from the tower. Help, if needed, was never more than a day's march away. BBC.com stated the Queen's special association with Windsor Castle began when she was a child. The then Princess Elizabeth and her family made Royal Lodge, a mansion on the grounds of Windsor Estate, their weekend country home. They were a close-knit family, and throughout the 1930s, and as her father ascended the throne and Europe descended into war, she and her sister enjoyed privacy and play there. In World War II, the Queen and her sister spent a lot of time at Windsor Castle. Queen Elizabeth was 14 when she and her sister were sent to Windsor to escape the bombings by the Germans that was going on in London. And it was said that they knew Hitler wouldn't bomb Windsor Castle because he loved it and he wanted to make it his home. So whenever there was a bomb threat, Marion Crawford, who was a former nanny, wrote in her book, The Little Princesses, that she and Princess Elizabeth and Princess Margaret would go down to the beetle-infested dungeon with no central heating or air. So during the war, precautions were made in the castle to protect the antiques. All the chandeliers were taken down, the glass-fronted cabinets were turned to the wall, and paintings had been removed, and much of the furniture was under dust sheets. So how big is the castle? With 1,000 rooms, 13 acres of grounds, and reminders of rich history everywhere amid its Gothic architecture, it's a little wonder the Queen saw the castle as a sanctuary. It also played host to overseas monarchs, presidents, and prime ministers throughout her reign, and there's a great big table in the castle that can seat 160 guests. So it wasn't supposed to be a royal residence. ReadersDigest.com said when William the Conqueror originally built Windsor Castle in the late 11th century, it was intended to be a fortress. And William erected the castle to oversee a strategic part of the River Thames and to protect Norman dominance around London. And the royals of the time lived in the former palace of Edward the Conqueror and the village of Old Windsor. And in 1110, Henry I became the first royal to use the castle as a residence. So Windsor Castle has been in the royal family for almost 1,000 years, and 39 monarchs have been there. So that's quite impressive. So the biggest room at the castle is St. George's Chapel, and the chapel was established in the 14th century by King Edward III, and it was continuously expanded upon through the 15th century. It's considered to be one of the best examples of Gothic architecture in England, and there are enough pews to seat 800 people. And there's been a lot of weddings there. Prince Harry and Meghan Markle tied the knot at St. George's Chapel in 2018. And a lot of Queen Victoria's children were married here, and so were Prince Charles and Camilla Parker Bowles. It has also been the burial place for a lot of the monarchs. ReadersDigest.com stated that St. George's Chapel is also the burial place to 10 monarchs. And as Newsweek points out, not all those royals were resting in peace. Some were beheaded, some poisoned, some killed by natural causes. Regardless, royal tombs are scattered all over the place, and tombs near the altar, aisle, choir, and west door, as well as an underground vault. There's rumors of ghosts there. People said they've seen Henry VIII, and guests said that they've heard the king's moans and groans, and have seen the apparition of a large, anxious, angry man pacing and shouting in the halls. His second wife, Anne Boleyn, who was beheaded at the Tower of London, is also reported to haunt the Dean's Cloister at Windsor. The kitchen there, it's old and it still works. It's the oldest working kitchen in the country, and it's been around to serve 32 of 39 monarchs who have called Windsor home. And a fun fact, the clocks in the kitchen are always 5 minutes ahead to ensure the Queen always got her food on time. The castle was a favorite place for the Queen. Queen Elizabeth spent a lot of time there in her childhood, so it held a special place in her heart. And when she took the throne in 1952, she decreed the castle would become her principal weekend retreat. She had the castle's private apartments renovated and took up residence there with her husband and their 2 children at that time. So there was a signal of when the Queen was there, so if the royal standard was flown over Windsor Castle, it meant that the Queen was present. If she wasn't in residence, the Union flag would be flying instead. While non-royals also live there, hundreds of people are needed to keep the castle running right. 150 people live at the castle, and they employ 400 staff people, according to Reader's Digest. There's 379 clocks, and the clocks horticultural conservative Robert Ball takes care of them all. The 2 clock change weekends are the busiest time of the year for us. We take on the challenge of adjusting hundreds of clocks over 2 days, he told the Royal Collection Trust. The Royal Collection contains many fascinating and extraordinary timepieces, highly complex mechanisms, so great care has to be taken with each one. And when it comes to daylight saving hours, it takes about 40 hours of work to prepare and around 16 hours to turn all 450 clocks forward or backward. There's also 300 fireplaces, and it's tended full-time by a family of tendersmiths that have been doing the job for decades. Queen Mary, she had a dollhouse there. It was built for the Queen in the 1920s, and it's a 1/12 scale, 1-inch, 1-foot model home, featuring a complete library of 170 miniature books, electric lighting, a fully stocked wine cellar with real wine, and a working plumbing that allows you to draw a bath, and the house is a one-of-a-kind work of art. It's filled with miniature replicas of brands and items that would have been found in any royal palace, and the artworks and creations that fill the home were gifted by over 1,500 artists, artisans, and manufacturers. While the tree-lined avenue that leads up to Windsor Castle was introduced by Charles II. The iconic stretch that starts from George IV Gateway and ends at the Copper Horse statue. It boasts fantastic views of the castle, its grounds, and the deer population of the royal parks. So there was a fire at St. George's Chapel in 1992. The fire started at Queen Victoria's private chapel, where a faulty spotlight ignited a curtain next to the altar. Within minutes, the blaze was unstoppable, and it spread to St. George's Hall next door. According to Royal Collection Trust, the fire was first spotted around 11:30 in the morning, and within 3 hours, 225 firefighters from 7 counties were battling the flames, and at the peak of the operation, they were using 36 pumps, discharging 1.5 million gallons of water. There was time, thank goodness, to save works of art. Staff were removing works of art from the royal collection from the paths of fire. The castle's quadrangle was full of some of the finest examples of French 18th century furniture, paintings by Van Dyck, Rubens, and Gainsborough, Seville's porcelain, and other treasures of the collection. So only 2 works of art were lost in the fire, a rosewood sideboard and a very large painting by Sir William Beechey that couldn't be taken down from the wall in time. So luckily, works of art had already been removed from many rooms in advance of rewiring work. The restoration was decided that it would be a combination approach, with a new room called the Lantern Lobby created in the space where the private chapel had previously stood and where the fire had started, and this created a formal passageway between the private and state apartments. St. George's Hall was restored to design close to the room's original 14th century appearance, but with a 20th century reinterpretation. A new hammer beam roof was constructed from substantial English oak using traditional methods and tools. The official completion date for the restoration project was the 20th of November, 1997, 5 years to the date of the outbreak of the fire and the 50th wedding anniversary of Queen Elizabeth II and Prince Philip, Duke of Edinburgh. Top things to see there: the grand reception room is decorated with real gold and chandeliers. It was once used as a main ballroom in the castle. Perhaps the most striking piece on display is a large urn presented to Queen Victoria by Tsar Nicholas I in 1839. And you can see the great paintings there, the world's greatest collection of paintings, including artists such as Hans Holbein, Van Dyck, and Rubens. Its highlight has to be the remarkable triple portrait of King Charles I by Anthony Van Dyck. And then mythical paintings. Look up and you'll see mythical ceilings paintings by Antonio Varero with kings, queens, chariots, cherubs, and a banquet of gods that are a sight to behold. And then visit the moat room to learn about the castle's history and the Pug Yard Learning Center on the castle grounds. And the center is open for families during the UK school holidays, and the center is a great base for families to use during their visit. And then there's the changing of the guard ceremony, where a new guard replaces the old, and a colorful spectacle. The ceremony can be watched by castle visitors on Thursdays and Saturdays. So the Queen really loved this place, mainly because she grew up there, and all those memories of being there with her family were priceless. It's a beautiful place with so much history, and it's amazing that it could be a residence for the royals, as well as a place that could be visited by the public. It is great we can visit and marvel at all that was done to the place through the years, and that it is still standing and still thriving. I hope everybody enjoyed the video, and if you did, if you could give it a thumbs up, that would be great. And be sure to click the notification bell to see more episodes of Queen Elizabeth: A Day in Her Life, and you'll be able to view it. And if you haven't subscribed yet, if you could do that, it would really be greatly appreciated. And I really wish everybody a very great day, and tune in again soon for another episode of Queen Elizabeth: A Day in Her Life. Thank you. Bye.